All right, hello, hello. Welcome to the It Will Come Show. This is your host, George C.O.C. Samuels, and you are tuning in to episode 58. As per the last couple of episodes, I am tuning in straight from my bedroom due to everything that's going on in the world right now, global pandemic, recession, possibly depression. But despite all that, still got a lot of hope and optimism in me, as always, because of the things that I will share with you today. So what we're going to be talking about is daily rituals, remote work, distributed teams. So it's an overall theme about just how people are working right now, despite what's happening with COVID and just a lot of the madness that's seemingly occurring everywhere. So let's dive straight into it. All right, so we've got a few interesting articles here, and the first one that we have is actually around, could COVID 19 cause a permanent shift to remote work? My humble opinion is about 80% yes. And the reason for this is because not everything can be done remotely, right? There's obviously a lot of jobs that don't have the luxury of being able to go online, that involves having to deal with people, face to face, right? Especially all the frontline workers right now, in healthcare especially. Shout out to some of you who are watching and I know are in that line of work. And yeah, so if you look here, of course, for those of you that are able to go to remote, there's definitely some things around productivity that you need to be aware of. Um, and also, if you look at a lot of companies to date that haven't made that shift to remote work, you'll see how they haven't been able to actually figure out or structure their employment structures in general, like from an HR perspective. And so I think now that a lot of people are having to go remote, they're going to have to really think about how to make this work in terms of flexible work arrangements. How does health insurance or cover work? And actually, I'll include a link because I came across a link not too long ago that was all about how, if you have a business, how to deal with insurance or health insurance and setting up your structures so that it does actually benefit people who are flexible, who can work from wherever they want. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities that come with remote work, but it's a different style of working. I've already been hearing stories about people who are actually right now are struggling working from home, either alone or with their immediate family. And I actually experienced this back in the day when I first went into freelance mode. I remember thinking, oh yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna be my own boss. I'm gonna, have the time to do whatever I want. And actually, working from home sucked. For me personally, because I enjoy being around people, and I'm sure a lot of you listening might be able to relate to that. When you are home alone and you don't get that physical interaction, or you can at least have some sort of like live stream with other people, it really starts to make you feel a little bit crazy. So there are definitely ways to sort of combat this, and I think it's very important that you learn them so that you don't go stir crazy as well while you're at home. All right, so that's article number one. Next one here: 5 remote work lessons learned from Asia. So I thought this was a good one to share with everybody because obviously a lot of people during this time, uh, well, Asia obviously got hit first, right, with COVID 19. And so there are definitely a lot of lessons that were shared in those first couple of weeks. And this particular one is from Gartner. So I'll just share some of the main points, right? So in terms of how companies responded and will be responding right now, of course, will be a lot of similarities. So, remote working is becoming the norm. There will be flexibility on benefits, which we just spoke about, and also the costs, right? Some of the benefits of working from home is that it reduced the overheads for a lot of companies that have physical offices and physical spaces. So at FIA, who are sponsors for this show, which is also one of my companies, we're all about bridging gaps between people and technology. And when I first started the company, it was actually with a remote first working culture, right? So we actually wanted to build a company, so it didn't matter if we had an office or not. And I think that was probably the right move considering just how things have panned out. So, these are definitely things that everyone should be thinking about, especially if you're considering starting your own business. And I think a lot of people are probably going to do that right now. And whether it's their own business or whether it's going to be, freelance, the options are endless. So, just going back again, I'll switch the article. So lessons learned from remote work, right? Provide direction, confidence, and resilience. Yes, this is definitely a big key thing. I think this has to do with teamwork in general, right? When you have a remote team, it becomes even more essential that you actually um, give clear guidance to your team. This is something that I'm constantly working on as well, and it's one of the reasons why we started out using Slack and then we ended up moving to Basecamp. If you haven't heard of Basecamp, highly recommend them too. They're a project management tool that have been around for more than a decade, and they've learned a thing or two about how to work remotely well. There's actually a book by their founder, Jason Fried, called Remote, and it's actually been selling like hotcakes at this point in time. So if you have not heard about it before, um, let me just bring it up. So here we go. This is the book. Highly recommended. I'll put a link to it in the comments afterwards. But there's currently a deal if you find the founder on Twitter. I think what he's doing is that he's saying if you send him a receipt to an email address, he'll refund you the money after you purchase it. So not a bad deal, right? And I think you could learn a lot from a company that has, I would say they've mastered this because the software Basecamp actually, there's a lot of subtle things that they've done that just really helps you to slow down and think things through in a remote work environment. So provide direction, provide as much instruction as possible. Confidence. This might involve having daily stand-ups. If you're not familiar with this is in relation to those daily rituals I was talking about. Daily stand-ups come from the software engineering industry. It started off as a kind of set the basis, or it was one of the actions that make up the agile workflow. And so with the daily stand-up, it's a very simple ritual. If you're in a physical environment, then everybody would just stand up for the first 5 minutes of the day, go around and ask each other, what did you do over the last 24 hours? What are you doing next over the next 24 hours? And any blocks or challenges. And then everybody would go through that, very strict on that, I think 5 minutes max for everyone. And that would just help get people in sync. Now when you translate that online, it ends up becoming an asynchronous thing, which means say, for example, if you got a tool like Slack, you could actually post these same sort of things, like what's done to do blocks, into a bot or into Slack, and then that just gets checked by the manager or team lead every day, or people checking with each other as well, just to stay in sync, right, to see what's been happening. And this is a very useful ritual during this time to do, right, because as you're at home and it gets a lot more easy, it gets a lot easier to actually get off track when you're going through something like this, like a global pandemic, right? And trying to coordinate yourselves online. So yeah, that's one. Contextualize coronavirus for the organization. Well, yes, right? So really this is just about talking to your people. I've seen this both from clients and even for ourselves. Despite the coronavirus, right? Of course, share. So one of the things we've done in our own Slack channels is that we've created a dedicated coronavirus or COVID-19 channel so that people have like a dedicated spot to talk about what's happening in this arena right now, which I think is very healthy and it allows people to share their fears, worries, concerns, and also have it addressed by you and your team. So that's number 2. 3, encourage international peer-to-peer interactions. Right, so this is a given. During this time, you really got to get people to engage with one another, to talk, to communicate. This is probably not a time to just isolate yourself and not talk to anyone, although, of course, there are going to be people like that. But I think right now, your support networks are going to be very important. Establish team guidelines. Yes, these are just around putting in etiquettes, around how you want to interact and how you want to communicate. Some people might not see this as important, but actually in the long run, this becomes so vital. I can't stress this enough. When I've done training, communications training for people in the past, Some people might be like, "Oh, communication is not about the communication." Um, I would have to disagree with that, right? If you actually look at the stats, in any sort of relationship, whether it be work or personal, communication is a huge factor in things going well or going wrong. So don't overlook this. Provide flexibility for employers' remote work needs. So yes, again, this is just understanding that everybody will have different home environments to work out of. Some people might have a family. Some people might be alone and can travel wherever they want. Um, one thing that really works in a remote work scenario or culture for a company is focusing on the results and not necessarily the inputs, because a lot of companies are set up to only be looking at how many hours you've clocked or those sort of things, those sort of inputs, and they aren't necessarily a contributing factor to uh, the end result, right? You can have a lot of people being busy but not necessarily productive. So it's just about looking at the end result. Oh, and I just realized that it's been on my face the entire time. So you didn't even see some of these screenshot things. So this is what I'm looking at. So provide direction, confidence, and resilience, contextualize coronavirus for the organization, encourage international peer-to-peer interactions, establish team guidelines, and provide flexibility for employees' remote work needs. Okay, next up. This particular article was sent to us in our pack. So if you're not familiar with the pack, I'll probably mention it a lot because it's one of our communities. The pack is a productivity accelerator that is all about helping people just leverage the power of the group, the pack, for productivity. A lot of the times when it comes to personal productivity, it's an individual pursuit, but actually we found you can be a lot more productive with the right people around you, right? And there are just certain things that we do that helps get the most out of those, out of our members. Okay, so yeah, but this article was sent in the pack recently, and it was actually more about like the needing to end the era of bullshit jobs, right? So this is really funny because it's kind of true if you look at it, right? At this point in time, everybody's kind of sort of snapping back to what matters most, right? Especially to jobs that are are actually needed versus not, you know. And not to say that a brand consultant isn't needed, but it's probably not going to be at the top of mind for people right now. You're probably going to go back to your general sales marketing people, right? You're going to go to people who maybe growth hackers, and I'm talking about in the online space. Uh, People who are maybe remote work consultants, actually, that might be very useful during this time. And so if you're listening to this and you're needing help getting set up with your company on how to work remotely well, you can hit us up as well. So yeah, this article was kind of funny, but you can see here, capitalism is supposed to value work. Why has it led much to the workforce into the age of seemingly meaningless task titles and functions? It's kind of true. So yeah, if you have your own thoughts on that, feel free to comment on it. All right, coronavirus could kill handshakes. This is kind of interesting, right? Because it's such a big cultural thing for many nations to shake hands, right? Especially in the business world, and it's a very Western thing, to shake hands. And I think what's going to be funny, right, is that uh, this sort of gesture, it might take a while to come back, which may suck for people who enjoy like a handshake, but I think people are just going to get used to not risking it, and they're going to learn what it's like to do business in Asia, because in Asia, right, they're already used to it. Maybe they figured out a long time ago. It's like you don't even shake hands. You just in Japan, right? You bow. In India, namaste. I think they kind of figured that out already. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this impacts just cultural behavior around the world. If you're in South America, the kissing on the cheeks, maybe even 3 times, like yeah, that stuff might be reduced. But during these times, we're gonna have to really evaluate those things. Not that they're bad. It's just that this is all going to be shifted and changed. So actually, before we go into this one, I'd like to go here. So this is some positive news. Like this is what I thought was really cool. So I know one of the co-founders of Gojek. If you're not familiar with Gojek, they are like the Uber in Southeast Asia. They are a billion-dollar company, unicorn, based out of Indonesia. They started off in Indonesia, and they, it looks like, their bosses gave up 25% of their annual salaries for drivers, partners, etc. So yeah, so this is cool. This is good news, right? So yeah, as I mentioned, I know the one of the co-founders for Gojek, Mikey Moran. If you don't know who he is, check him out. He's doing some really cool stuff right now in Bali. He set up a DJ cafe um, called Bali Praya, and it's a really cool concept. And yeah, cool guy too, Mikey. So shout out, Mikey, if you're listening to this. Keep doing what you're doing, and yeah, really proud of Gojek, for sort of showing this type of leadership. And this is something I've been noticing in Asia actually. A lot of the CEOs have been, doing this, right? Like giving up their salary before, just laying off people, which is really interesting because I haven't yet heard of many Western CEOs doing this yet. But if you do find any articles of leaders who are, please let me know. And I don't know if this is just a reflection of the different cultures, right? The collectivism versus individualism. And I know there's always talks and discussions and heated debates around these two topics, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay, this one here, I'm sharing this because this is more for people who are in the business world, but there was this site that was put up recently by a guy that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and essentially they've kind of aggregated all of the best marketing examples, growth marketing examples, in one spot. So you can have a look at sort of like the best and most recent landing pages that are converting really well. I think they have more than just landing pages. Let's go to. Okay, yep, that's a bit long, so I won't go through that. But here we go. Curates and adds the best marketing landing pages, growth case studies, podcast videos, articles, guides, and more to inspire marketers like you for growth. Sourced by the community continuously. Yeah, so I think this is just a really good resource for people who are currently involved in, thinking about how to reinvent themselves, needing to, needing to put up landing pages really quick, studying what works, what doesn't. This is a time to really look at these things because marketing is all about psychology. And if you are interested in how the human mind works and you're stuck at home and needing to get yourself out online, this is a great resource, right? Again, it's all about going to the fundamentals. And sales and marketing for business, fundamentals, right? At the end of the day, you need sales, money coming in, and it's all about the human psychology. So yeah, definitely worth checking out if you're at all interested in this. And yeah, if you have any questions, just write in the comments below. I put this up here because this has more to do with the Bitcoin SV community. So if you're not familiar with Bitcoin SV, it is a sort of like a third branch of Bitcoin. The second one being Bitcoin Cash, BCH, and then the Bitcoin, as everybody knows it, is BTC. Now there's some politics around that. Technically, BTC is not really the original Bitcoin, but by name, yes. But in terms of its fundamentals, from at a protocol level, it's been changed. But doesn't matter at this point in time. I'm sharing this because this is showing what Bitcoin could do or could always do, right? If you see it as more than just a global currency, it can actually be treated as a global storehouse or database that is unchangeable, right? And can actually hold a lot more than. Yeah, this might be a topic for another day, actually, because I can geek out hard about this. But this particular site, just to show the concept right now, this is similar to maybe Steemit. So if you haven't heard of Steemit, let me show you. Oh, sorry, Steemit. All right, here we go, Steemit.com. So Steemit is a social network. You can set up forums, content, right, and you can tip one another, right? So basic function is that you can get paid for your content, right? The same thing is happening here over in BitSV, but it's using the Bitcoin blockchain as a store itself. So it's not necessarily just about getting tips, but everything that's being interacted on in the site is all happening on the Bitcoin blockchain. And what this just means is that it allows for things to be stored, allows things to be verified in a manner that hopefully reduces corruption issues in the future, but also allows you to see the source, right? It allows it to be a truth source of truth. And so here you can use a Bitcoin wallet, a BSV wallet, to be able to read articles. This is why this is important, is that I think there's an opportunity for people to earn from the content they create during this time. There's a lot of people who I mean, I was even speaking to a sister of mine in Holland, and she's looking at taking her music online, right? There's opportunities on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, of course, right? But with a lot of these sites, you don't necessarily get paid, directly from it. You'd have to wait until you get a good, sizable audience before any of that could happen, and that might take some time. But in a Bitcoin world, you could actually start getting paid from day one because every interaction, say like a simple like, would be a micropayment, right? And so it provides some interesting shift in behavior too. When you know that like every interaction is like a micropayment, after a while you might even forget that you're actually paying people when you like. But in a Bitcoin world, what this means is that people get to own their own data, right? And if somebody tries to access your data, they would actually have to pay you, right? And that's why I've always found it so fascinating. So yeah, this is just a site that launched not too long ago. It's pretty nice and clean, worth checking out. But essentially, they have a paywall. You can opt to have a paywall whereby, in order to read the rest of the article, you pay 10 cents. I think this is actually a lot better than what we have right now on the internet, especially a lot of the major news sites, is that they are putting a paywall for the entire thing, but they're requiring a subscription, which is stupid because I don't want a whole subscription to a news site. I just want to read a particular article, right? So I'd be more than happy to pay 10 cents for that, if that means, especially if it's for a site, right, that like I respect and is reputable. Yeah, right. So these are just opportunities for people to be able to monetize their content. So with that, we've got our final article, and this one was sent to me by a special someone, which I really liked. And here, I'll read this quote out, right? This is from Bill Gates. The coronavirus is sent to remind us of the important lessons that we seem to have forgotten, and it is up to us if we will learn them or not. And a spiritual purpose. I'm a strong believer that there is a spiritual purpose behind everything that happens, whether that is what we perceive as being good or bad, or being bad. As I meditate upon this, I want to share with you what I feel the Corona COVID virus is already doing to us. Now, actually, this bit here, is that from him? Oh, it is. Okay. It is reminding us that we are all equal regardless of our culture, religion, occupation, financial situation, or how famous we are. This disease treats us all equally. Perhaps we should too. This is so true. If you think about it, right, like right now, this is probably the best thing to happen to us, right? Because say if this was an actual war with another country, like a world war sort of situation, right? We'd have someone to blame. Whereas a virus, I mean, of course, people are probably going to be looking to see like who started the virus. Is it man-made? Blah blah blah. But when it's nature, it's hard to like argue with nature. You know, she does her thing. And so with this, it means that like we don't have something to really fight or someone to fight, right? This is a virus, right? So, but we have to all band together in order to fight it. And it goes back to many stories where they do talk about how sometimes the best way to unite people is to have a common enemy. And so this is a very interesting time, right? Because it always plays out. I wish it wouldn't always play out, but it kind of does. But yeah, during this time, it doesn't matter how much money you had. You could lose all of it right now and be homeless. Doesn't matter your occupation, doesn't matter your religion. Right now, we all have to band together in order to make the most out of this time and to get through it. Right? It is reminding us that we go back. It is reminding us that we're all connected, and something that affects one person has an effect on another. It is reminding us that the false borders that we have put up have little value, as this virus does not need a passport. Yes, as a global citizen, third culture kid, that definitely resonates. Right? I would love it if we didn't need a passport anymore, or at least had a global passport. But maybe one day. It is reminding us by oppressing us for a short time of those in this world whose whole life is spent on oppression. It is reminding us of how precious our health is, that's for sure, and how we have moved to neglect it through eating nutrient-poor manufactured foods and drinking water that is contaminated with chemicals upon chemicals. we don't look after our health, we will of course get sick. So true, right? Um, during this time, people are going back to the basics again, and I think people who have already been operating from home or maybe even growing their own foods, they're going to be fine. And it's just going to show that some of the things we've sacrificed for convenience, has translated into the intoxication of our own bodies. And this is why I'm so, in many ways, I'm so hopeful and so happy some of this is happening, even though it is obviously costing us a lot. I think this is the debt we owe for not taking care of the planet, not taking care of ourselves, not taking care of one another. And this is an inevitability. So when I see people also, of course you want to save lives, but we did this to ourselves, in my opinion. It isn't just about coronavirus. It's like a karmic debt. That's how I see it. So even though today's topic was about work and stuff, correlated. Everything that has to do with work, well, work won't matter if our basics and fundamentals aren't even taken care of. So let's go back, right? It is reminding us of the shortness of life and of what is most important for us to do, which is to help each other, especially those who are older, sick. And I would agree with this. During this time, obviously the most vulnerable amongst us are the older, sick, people with compromised immune systems, and that's why it's so important to keep yourself at home for a bit, to do the social distancing, because it's not just about you. It's about the old and the sick. If you don't want them to die, just stop it. Just don't go out for a bit. You know, and to be fair, I know that not all of us will have it, right? And a lot of us are healthy and fine, but we are being forced to think about others right now, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Purpose is not to buy toilet rolls. 5. It is reminding us of how materialistic our society has become, and how, when in times of difficulty, we remember that it's the essentials that we need: food, water, medicine, as opposed to the luxuries that we sometimes unnecessarily give value to. Isn't that the truth? It is reminding us of how important our family and home life is, and how much we have neglected this. Exactly, right? This is an important time to just reconnect with loved ones, spend time with them, call them, and heal stuff. If you had like a not so great relationship with your family, be forced to have a look at these things. Our true work. Now, I don't know if I'll go. Oh, okay, it goes there. All right. Our true work. 7. It is reminding us that our true work is not our job. That is what we do, not what were created to do. Our true work is to look after each other, to protect each other, and to be of benefit to one another. It is reminding us to keep our egos in check. Oh, so true. It is reminding us that no matter how great we think we are, or how great others think we are, a virus can bring our world to a standstill. It is reminding us that the power of free will is in our hands. We can choose to cooperate and help each other, to share, to give, to help, and to support each other, or we can choose to be selfish, to hoard, to look after only ourselves. I will emphasize this too. I've definitely seen how a lot of people have resorted to just hoarding straight away. Singapore has probably done a really good job in curbing this. I think there are some people who are still looking to hoard, especially out in the suburbs of Singapore. But interestingly, in the city where I am right now, I would go to supermarkets and they're fully stocked with everything. And even when I was going to buy stuff, I didn't buy more than I needed to because I was being mindful of other people. Now, to be fair, other people might not think like that. But imagine if we all did, right? Fear makes us do some stupid things sometimes, but don't ever discount danger, and that's completely understandable. It is reminding us that we can be patient or we can panic. We can either understand that this type of situation has happened many times before in history and will pass, or we can panic and see it as the end of the world and consequently cause ourselves more harm than good. I would just emphasize that too, right? It is going to be how you see the world right now and how you react to it. Final couple of ones. It is reminding us that this can either be an end or a new beginning. I choose to see this as a new beginning. This can be a time of reflection and understanding, to learn from our mistakes, or it can be the start of a cycle which will continue until we finally learn the lesson we are meant to. 12. It is reminding us that the earth is sick. Yes. It is reminding us that we need to look at the rate of deforestation just as urgently as we look at the speed at which toilet rolls are disappearing off of our shelves. We are sick because our home is sick. Ain't that the truth? It is reminding us that after every difficulty there is always ease. Life is cyclical, and this is just a phase in this great cycle. We do not need to panic. this too shall pass. And, you know, exactly, right? We don't need to panic, but, you know, still be smart, right? Yeah. Whereas many see the COVID-19 virus as a great disaster, I prefer to see it as a great corrector. It is sent to remind us of the important lessons that we seem to have forgotten, and it is up to us if we will learn them or not. So, I thought I'd include that as sort of like the last part of today's episode, because I think it's just a really good reminder of what's important again, right? To remind yourself that during these times, you're going to have to, you're being forced to look at things that you might have neglected for a long time, whether that's your health, whether that's relationships, whether that is, the job that you're even in, or maybe even your business, right? What actually matters? What are you inspired by? What are you motivated by? What will get you up during these times? What is important? Please, please, please think about these things during this time. And to relate it back to today's episode around daily rituals, think about what daily rituals can be positive and uplifting for yourself. Get those in place so as soon as you wake up, you do them, and that helps keep you focused. I won't go into the science of daily rituals, but trust me on this. Try it out yourself, and you'll see just how effective it can be. From a remote work perspective, if you are working remotely right now, and if you have any questions around it, just comment below in the comment section of this video. And as for distributed teams, use tools like Basecamp, like Slack, or if you're a Microsoft person, Microsoft Teams. And structure it, guide your people, and as always, remember, through patience and persistence, it will come.